Osmia. What the heck does that even mean? Honestly, until today, I had no idea myself, but I learned from our guest, Dr. Sarah Villafranco, who is the creator of Osmia Organics, which is an organic soap and body care company making high quality organic products that are free of chemicals and preservatives and all the nasty stuff that can aggravate our skin and aggravate all aspects of our health. So Sarah Villafranco, she is a wealth of knowledge and information. She is an emergency room physician turned soap maker. But she didn't lose her medicinal physician relationship with the people because she is supporting people holistically through the production of her amazing products that help heal skin. And we talk about how skin is healed from the outside in as well as the inside out. We know that, our skin health is connected with the health of the rest of our body, of course, and we talk about that connection in this conversation. We also talk about some of the many chemicals that we need to be mindful of when we are shopping for even the natural products, which can be tainted by these elements that can aggravate your skin and the rest of your health. So we need to be mindful of these sort of things. And Sarah is the master of this. She is the skin guru. So we talk about her journey, how she went from emergency room doctor into soap maker and entrepreneur. And her and I connected. Actually, the story goes back to just before we moved to Carbondale, Colorado. I was scrolling the Instagrams and I was scrolling the hashtag, I believe, Carbondale, Colorado, and I saw beautiful photos that Sarah had posted. Her handle, by the way, is Osmium Organics, and Sarah has a wonderful Instagram account there. So anyways, she was posting these beautiful images of nature and the mountains and her life, and I was like, wow, this person really knows how to live. And then fast forward a few months, we moved to Carbondale and we move into this condo, which is literally situated right above her shop. So we are literally neighbors now, and finally we got a chance to sit down face to face and connect, and I got to learn about her journey. I got to learn about how to keep my skin healthy and vibrant. We talk about all that kind of stuff. We also talk about aging and how to age with grace and how we can age without fearing aging, because aging is something that we are all doing in this very moment. We are all growing older and also wiser, of course. So anyways, it was a lovely connection and conversation with our guest, Dr. Sarah Villafranco, and please do go and check out her amazing products at osmiaorganics.com and also her Instagram at Osmia Organics. And I hope you do learn a lot from Sarah in this conversation. But before we dive in, just a reminder, new and old friends alike, be sure to subscribe and rate and review this podcast. If you haven't done so already, I would be so grateful. Just leave a little comment, provide some feedback. I do truly appreciate it. And what's even more meaningful than that is sharing this information with friends and family and loved ones who would benefit from hearing this kind of stuff. One more thing, you guys. The Medicinal Living online course is a 6-week self-paced transformational online healing journey, and it is our labor of love. Dr. Susanna and I poured our hearts and souls into developing this course that is 6 weeks filled with action steps that are guiding you into your healthy life. And we are covering all sorts of things from nutrition to hydration, to breathing, to moving, to thinking, to relating with friends, families, and loved ones, and also connecting with our purpose. All of these things are foundational elements of your health, and this 6-week course is guiding you to mastery of all of these foundational determinants of health. So if you would like to learn more about this course, head to www.alter.health/course. And because I love you and because you're listening to this podcast, I am giving you guys 20% off of this course. So use the code Alter Your Health. That's the name of this podcast. Alter Your Health, all one word, all caps, when you check out with the Medicinal Living online course. 20% off. And I do hope you enjoy this transformational health journey. So we made it through that, and now we are making it into the main event, this wonderful conversation with our guest, Sarah. So sit back, relax, or continue your run or your commute. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, and keep doing it with some mindfulness, with some intention, and enjoy this conversation while you're at it with my friend, our guest, Dr. Sarah Villafranco. Welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast, Sarah. So happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Like I said, to be honest, it's just kind of an opportunity and my excuse to get to know cool people a little bit better and hear and learn about what they're doing and how I can, live my life in a healthier, more mindful way. So
yeah, and we're neighbors.
So I'm like on top of you in some ways. You're down there and you're over there, and
I'm in a lot of spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're expanding and growing, and we can talk in here and learn a little bit about that as well.
Sure.
But where should we start? Like how, you're this kind of skin guru of sorts, and how did that come to be? Where did you develop an interest in learning about skin and what makes for healthy, ageless skin?
Yeah. Well, let's see, we'll touch base on the ageless thing later, but it was sort of a roundabout path that got me to skin. It's not like I started out thinking, this is my passion, this is what I want to do. So, I went to medical school in 1997 or 8 or something like that. And I entered in 1997, and I went into medicine because I just wanted to help people feel better and live healthier lives. I had been at Georgetown University undergrad and studied psychology there. And I was working with, after I graduated, I was in their cognition lab studying cognition and aging. And it was a really cool job, and I was the only person in the lab. So I really looked forward to the days when we brought in elderly subjects for our testing. And I found it was that connection with I called them subjects back then. It sounds really impersonal. Yeah. And I just really sort of wanted that contact. And so as I thought about what I wanted to do, I realized that it was that moment of touching people's lives that mattered to me. So I went into medical school with that in mind, and also at Georgetown, and it was a really cool experience being there. But I would go through the rotations, and I'd do pediatrics, and I'd be like, well, this is cool, but I don't want to do just peds. And then I'd go to OB, and the same thing. And I kind of liked a little of everything, but nothing ever felt like, oh, this is exactly for me. So I ended up in the ER because I thought, well, okay, you get a little of everything here. And I'm pretty chill under pressure, which is a good way to be in the ER. And so, that's how I sort of ended in medicine. And then as I practiced medicine, I had sort of two realizations. So the first was that the best way to help people live healthier lives is to impact their small daily decisions, right? I'm sure you are an advocate of this.
Yeah, you had this awareness in the emergency department. People were coming in,
with
from
totally
all sorts
preventable illnesses, right? Because I was in the city, so I was seeing, out here you see a ton of ortho and whatever, but in the city you're seeing diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. And these are diseases that are largely avoidable by your daily decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so I started, I would have patients with an ankle sprain, and the nurses would hear me talking about smoking cessation. And they're like, Sarah, let's go. And I'm like, but he smokes. We have to talk about this. So that was the first realization, that it was in people's daily decisions that long-term health gets created or destroyed, right? And then my second unfortunate realization was that within the current somewhat broken medical system, and I'm not here to bash Western medicine because we need it, But the system is quite broken right now.
Yeah, we don't have to bash it, but we can pick on it if you want.
We can examine it.
We
How
can
about
examine
that?
it. Yeah.
So it's a pretty broken system, and it doesn't allow for that type of medicine, certainly not in the emergency room. So, I guess if I could rewind the clock and maybe study something else, maybe it would be more in the integrative medicine realm, but that wasn't really a thing back then. Andrew Weil was like the only guy doing it then.
Yeah,
and he, God bless him.
Yeah, he looked about the same 25 years ago.
Exactly.
And yeah.
So I was feeling that sense. I practiced in the ER for 10 years, and I had this sense of fatigue at the end of my shifts where I thought I'm depleted, and I didn't really change anyone's life other than helping them through a crisis, which was a worthwhile job, and I really enjoyed it. But I also just thought this is not going to impact their daily health. And that's what I wanted to do. So all that was like swirling. And then I had my second daughter. So then hormones were also swirling. And then my mom died of pancreatic cancer. So then grief came in the picture. And that's the type of perfect storm that makes people uproot their entire careers and start something totally different.
Well, that's a really good point. And that sort of storm can also cause other things, but it seems like you use that storm as a really intentional, creative opportunity. Or was that the feeling in the moment?
No, the feeling in the moment was, what the hell? What is this life I'm living, and what do I want to do with it? Because so when my mom died, I was in the room, and my 3-month-old baby was in the next room, and her heart stopped, and my little baby woke up crying, and I had this sense of like collapsing and exploding time where I just was like, this is going to be over so fast. And it was so like real to me in that moment. And I thought, I want to do what feels most me, because there's so many of us on this planet, right? So how can you bring something that's really authentically you and feels meaningful to you? And that is where the medicine piece was falling a little short for me. And so during that grieving time, I looked over at, what is the name of that? There's like a local ranch up in Basalt. I'm spacing on the name of it right now, but
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, and so they had a soap making class, and I was like, that sounds kind of cool, because there's not much creativity in the way you practice emergency medicine. You can't like decide what dose of a drug feels good. You
just follow your intuition.
Exactly. So I was really missing that, and I went to this soap making class, and it was then that a little like switch flipped in my brain, because first of all, making soap, you need to come down to our studio and do it with us, because it is
I look forward to that.
Funnest
I know
thing.
Susanna has some experience with soap making, but I just have soap using experience every once in a while.
Occasional. Good. I'm glad. So it was the soap piece that sort of got me turned on to the skincare, just because the process was so interesting. But then once I started, so then I had to do like this whole ego thing, right? Where like I worked really hard to become a board certified emergency medicine physician, right? Letting that go was not an easy decision. So I needed to know that if I was letting it go, I was going to let it go to do something else meaningful. And as much as I love soap, like just making soap wasn't going to be enough. So when I started studying ingredients that we all use on our skin every day and the way they're impacting our evolutionary health and the way they're impacting the environment, I then knew that I could practice the type of medicine that made sense to me.
Which is touching people every day through what they're putting on their skin.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you haven't let go of that. You're still a board certified emergency room physician, right?
Well, so I'm still a licensed physician, but in 2016, I let my board certification lapse, which was hard. It was like watching a ship sail away, but I thought, I don't want to go back to the ER, and I'm not going to go take the boards again just to prove to myself that I can. I did that already. So
I'm curious about that perfect storm transitionary process in your life. Was there anything besides those events that inspired you? Any person or book, or did your mother in any way in the life that she lived influence
maybe.
you?
She was a partner in a law firm in Washington, D.C. and was so she went to law school when I was 5. And I kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but I almost don't remember her until I was 17. And so, you know, this is a really sort of negative example. My mom was my best friend by the time she died, but that stretch was a hard one for me as a child. And so, you know, as a mother, I knew that that was not something I wanted to repeat. Now, starting a small business might not be the best way to spend time with your children because it has required more sustained effort than even medicine did by me, but it's a little bit more flexible. So I knew I wanted to be reading them stories every night and be there for the big moments and games and all that stuff. So that influenced me. And then I think, you know, like when she got diagnosed, she kind of started doing stuff that she had let go of. So, for example, she took up Japanese watercolor painting after she was diagnosed, and she got really quite good at it in the year before she died. And that made me aware of like how silly it was to wait to do stuff that you love, you know, because you don't want to do that with a death sentence, you know,
For sure.
like she did. And so I think as I was considering all this, and my pride kept getting in the way, like, but I'm a doctor and my dad's a Georgetown law professor, and how can I just be a soap maker? And, you know, it was hard for me, for my ego to release from that. But I haven't had any sort of moments where I thought my mom was like visiting me from beyond, but the closest I came was, you know, I sort of asked myself, like, what would she tell me? And the answer, like, so clearly was like, do what you love. And not everybody can do that, right? I'm not such an idealist that I'm like, oh, just follow your dreams and like everything will fall into place. I mean, you have to put dinner on the table. I get that. But my husband and I sort of came together and made this decision that like he could support us while I do this. And so I could follow my dreams. So it would be irresponsible in a way not to.
I think that we can all follow our dreams, you know, have like kind of one foot in and one foot out in any moment. And then when the timing is right, you know, jump 2 feet in when it's a smart decision. But yeah, I totally hear you. I think that there is this kind of overarching mindset of just let it all go and go with the wind and just trust the universe. And it's like, yes, do that.
And also make
keep
sure
your feet on the
kids
ground.
go to school and have clothing and stuff. Yeah.
All right. So you transitioned and in that kind of perfect storm into soap making via a class that you took in Basalt. And then soon after that, it was like this inspiration to start a business out of it?
So not soon, because there's no school to go to figure out how to do all of this.
Yeah. Well, you could create that. That could be what you do next.
That could be my next stage. So I call them my Walter White years. So I spent essentially 2 years in a friend's.
Who's Walter White?
Walter White is the guy from Breaking Bad. He's the crystal meth guy.
Okay.
Like he lives in a trailer and
I'm sure some listeners know.
They all know. Yeah, you're just not
I'm just
cool,
a loser.
Obviously.
Sorry for showing my loserness.
You're just too pure to know what Walter White is. So anyway, yeah. So it was like basically a storage room in a friend's house that I converted and exploded things and taught myself how to make soap. And then once I got soap, I moved into skincare and emulsions and some pretty complicated chemistry I like chemistry, but I'm not a chemist. And so it was that, and then just an immense amount of study about the ingredients and the botanicals that I was using and the essential oils that I was using and how to do those things in a really educated way. So there's a lot of essential oil experts out there who are not experts. And so I really wanted to know what I was doing and make sure it was safe and effective for skin. So 2 to 3 years doing that and working shifts in the ER and nursing babies and stuff.
So there was kind of this halfway in, halfway out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of thing.
Yep.
Cool. And yeah, I meant to ask you earlier. So specifically skin, did you struggle with skin conditions in your life? Have your family, kids, like why has that been like something that you're focusing on?
You know, it wasn't until I did have a condition called perioral dermatitis. You've heard of that probably as a, yeah, that's
for
a
sure.
naturopath. You come across it.
It's pretty common, right?
It's quite prevalent.
Yeah.
And once you know what it looks like, then it's like when you're going to buy a Subaru, like you start seeing Subarus everywhere. So I ended up with perioral dermatitis probably because of the stress of my mom dying and, you know, the career uncertainty or whatever, just life. I mean, you know, it's we all have those stress moments. And so then when I was experimenting in my little lab, I made this one soap that had dead sea mud and black clay in it. And I started using it, and my skin finally started to improve. And I had tried antibiotics and, you know, topical and oral antibiotics. I had tried the steroid creams, which, by the way, are the leading cause of perioral dermatitis.
I was going to say, that's one thing that I remember is don't treat periorbital dermatitis with steroids because that exacerbates it probably because it disrupts the skin flora. I don't know.
It does, and it also causes a rebound. So while it will quiet things temporarily, so I always tell people, like, if you're getting married next week, use it and just know your honeymoon's going to be rough, you know? But, you know, it really will cause this flare afterwards. Anyway, so the soap like really helped me start to see a difference. And then I got really interested in that piece and how I could help address different skincare concerns from acne to dermatitis to eczema, those types of things.
And when did you become aware of all of the not so healing compounds in the topical products that 99% of people are lathering on every day?
Yeah. I mean, during that period of study, that period of 2 or 3 years where I was teaching myself about the ingredients that are so common in skincare products. And I had used plenty of them. I mean, I sort of have always tended toward the earthy crunchy just because I think that real lavender smells better than fake lavender. But as I started to study, I saw how ubiquitous these ingredients that were causing so much trouble. Like one of the biggest troublemakers in the world of skincare ingredients is sodium lauryl or sodium laureth sulfate. And so in medical studies, for example, when let's say that you came up with like the Alter cream, right? And it was like a soothing cream and you wanted to take it to the lab to test it, you would take it to the lab and they would have these poor little animals there, right, to do their testing on. And the way that they create irritation to test your cream to see if it soothes irritation is with sodium lauryl sulfate. And sodium lauryl sulfate is in everything that foams. It's in your toothpaste. It's even in your Tom's toothpaste. It's in your 7th generation laundry detergent, not to mention all the mainstream ones.
So it's a foaming agent.
It's a foaming agent.
And are there natural foaming agents?
There are sort of coconut-based foaming agents, and that's sort of a little tricky because you get into things like sodium lauryl glucoside. Like, that sounds a lot like sodium lauryl sulfate.
Yeah,
like,
to me, for
right.
sure.
And so, you know, there's some degree to which those can be softer and less irritating, and there's probably also a degree to which we just don't have any data on it yet because it's all relatively new. So it could be that down the line we find that those ingredients are, you know, somewhat irritating too.
Yeah. And, you know, one of my understandings of kind of all these toxic chemicals, things that are floating around in our environment is that they just kind of accumulate and it's not necessarily one thing that is awful or evil, but it's just the additive effects of the thousands of things.
Yeah.
What would you say?
That's certainly true. I mean, I think, you know, the thing that sparked in my brain is just the broad category of synthetic fragrance. So synthetic fragrance is, in my book, maybe the second biggest evil in the
second to the
SLS in terms of skin, because it is really allergenic for people, and it also causes like a huge array of chemical sensitivity syndromes. People get headaches and all kinds of rashes, and synthetic fragrance is in almost everything as well. So I do think there's an additive effect. I also think there is, you know, because there's SLS in everything we all use and have since we were kids, we sort of eventually build up like or we just start to react to it. We sort of lose our tolerance because the cumulative exposure over a lifetime just becomes too much. And finally our body starts to sort of like reject it.
Cool. All right. Well, bouncing around a little bit in our conversation, you know, back to your business that took you a couple years to get up off the ground, Osmium Organics.
Yeah.
What does Osmium mean?
So it's sort of a dorky medical reference. So
Okay.
if
I'm a
you
dorky medical kind of guy.
okay, so if you have an inability to smell,
Oh,
you have anosmia.
got it.
And if
Yes.
you're pregnant, you have hyperosmia. And certain tumors in the brain can cause what's called parosmia, which is an altered sense of smell.
Mhm.
And so I plucked the word osmia to mean a sense of smell. And then, like, more broadly, I want it to remind people to sense their lives. So we all drink our coffee in the morning and we become mindless about it. Or we go for our runs and we just like, I got to get this done. You know, but instead, if you can, our tagline is return to your senses. And I mean it in all of the ways.
Yeah, I love that.
But the sensory piece of it has brought so much to me, especially I would say like in parenting, because having kids is hard. And a lot of times you're really tired and you just want to get them in bed, and being able to appreciate like the feeling of their sticky little syrup covered hand in yours is like, it just brings such texture to all these mundane moments of parenting.
Yeah, I love that. So there is a strong mission of mindfulness that the
Yes.
company brings. And, you know, following you on Instagram and your lovely stories, I can appreciate the intention in each product.
Yeah.
And I trust it's always been like that, and it will always be like that. As the business has kind of grown and there's more products and people, has it been challenging to maintain that strong intentional component of the business?
I mean, I think I've hired people who get it. You know, I have such an amazing team, and they all kind of feel it. They feel that we want to not sacrifice. We don't want to sacrifice when it comes to the quality of ingredients. We don't want to stop thinking about the impact our packaging is going to have. You know, we don't want to like greenwash anything. We don't want to create more illusions. We want to bring truth. And sometimes the truth is like, yeah, the best packaging for this happens to be plastic right now, and that sucks. You know, but we're always working to improve that. But I haven't really found it to be challenging to hold the intention, because I've found a bunch of people who love doing what they do. And like, it started, my first employee was previously our nanny. So she was our nanny for 5 years, and then she had kids, and she was kind of like, I think I want to do something else. And I was ready to start Osmia. So she came and I taught her how to make all the products, and she's still our production manager 7+ years in. And she loves the products like they're her children, which is how I love the products. And then, you know, so each person we've brought in really holds that and kind of feels, I think you feel the difference when you use it, when we're creating it. Just the whole vibe of the company is authentically one of wanting to make people's lives healthier. And so I think the products really are infused with that, and really what they're intended to be. I mean, I like to refer to the products as like, they're like my hook, right? Because you can hook people with a fine smelling soap, but really I want you to smell that soap and remind yourself to sense the moment and to drop into your life and to care for yourself. And that translates into your dinner when you're making dinner later and enjoying the process of creating a nourishing meal for yourself instead of feeling put upon to have to do that, you know? So I think it's really, I think of them as health triggers, that the products sort of get you to come back to the moment and realize that those moments are investments in your health.
Yeah. One thing that has always been so interesting to me since I remember learning about, you know, the neurology and sense of smell, and smell can do that, right? Smell can kind of launch us into a moment, past or present. So I'm sure you're carrying that in your products as well. Have you heard any stories from customers or friends about how, you know, your products have kind of triggered them and launched them into some moment?
Yeah, I mean, I hear it all the time. And, you know, the interesting thing about smell is that of the 12 cranial nerves, it is the only cranial nerve that has actual physical contact with the external environment. So the nerve endings of the olfactory nerve come through the cribriform plate, which is at the back of your nose, and they're dangling there. So they're actually in contact with air.
Yeah.
And then it's basically like the express lane to your limbic system, which is where all of your emotions live. So that's why you can smell cedar wood and before you remember, before you have the active memory of your grandmother's cedar closet, you have the emotion that's tied to your grandmother and her relationship with you.
Right. Thank you for reminding me of the
Isn't that
anatomical
cool?
connections there.
Yeah, it's really
But yeah,
neat.
it is really cool. And I love that, how that is infused in the name Osmia and the business and everything.
And I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you one other cool fact.
Yeah.
I just hired an employee who has anosmia from birth.
What?
Isn't that crazy? And so she said that I think that the incidence in the general population of anosmia is about 1%, which is the same as schizophrenia.
That also affects taste, no?
Of course.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we were all hiking the other day. We have like a birthday team hike that we did. And I was so enjoying the smell of pine like under my feet and the way it was wafting, and it was really dry and just that amazing Colorado early fall smell. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, oh God, it just, and then I thought it's sort of like it's trying to describe something, visual to a blind person.
Mm.
How do you even do the words even mean anything? Because she's never smelled them,
It's interesting.
It's so interesting.
So has she, in working at Osmia, has there been any glimpses of Osmia?
Nope.
Not yet.
Nope.
Well,
No, it won't. It's not going to happen.
Miracles happen. and it seems like Osmia products might be a source of miracle.
Maybe. We'd really have a great article to write if that happened. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So bouncing back to the skin, what, from your perspective, when people are shopping for skincare products, what sort of skin conditions are they most often treating or addressing?
I think lately, and maybe connected to that SLS conversation we had, the sodium lauryl sulfate, is just that people are quite reactive. So people seem to be their skin is just in a state of distress. And whether it's on their face or whether it's eczema on the body, but it's like everything they use seems to cause a flare-up. And
a flare-up of whether it's like acne or eczema or psoriasis even, or like anything. Just they're hypersensitive.
Hypersensitive is a good word. And so, my approach, because I was in the dermatitis flare as I was developing a lot of these products, has always been like a less is more. Our line is not about like this active ingredient and this active ingredient.
Yeah, this is going to cure that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're really about just supporting skin health. And a lot of times the way to do that is to let your skin do its job, and give it what it needs, but not a whole lot more.
Let your skin do its job. So tell us about the job of the skin and how we can let it do what it needs to do.
So, our skin is here for two main reasons. One is to keep water in, right? So it's our waterproofness. And the other is to keep pathogens and allergens out. So it's also
toxins and other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge piece of our immune system, right? And so when you're kind of constantly applying things, and this is like a much bigger conversation about how the beauty industry has convinced us that we need a lot of things that maybe we don't need. But people are just applying, like there's some incredible statistics about the number of products that the average woman uses on her body and face every day.
And then like, each one of those products has 30, 40, 100 chemicals. Yeah.
It's amazing. So all of that is something your skin has to deal with it. I mean, if you just think of it as like emails coming in at a rate of like 100 per minute, it's just like, you can't. At some point, you're just going to go like, stop. And so that's what I mean when I say like, let it be a little bit. And we want to, especially in Colorado, when it's like 26% humidity here, a little help is good. But, a lot of times we just need to apply fewer things in a less complicated routine.
That is really, my philosophy of health in general is, knowing that the body does heal itself, and how can we kind of get out of the way and also just support minimally in a way that just allows the bare basics of what the body needs to heal in any moment. Kind of this minimalistic approach to medicine and health and well-being. So are there, that being said, what does the skin need? Because can we thrive and have healthy skin with nothing, or do most people need to be nourishing it? I mean, I know that the skin gets nourished from the inside out,
Yep.
and
Yep.
but from the outside in, do we also need to be nourishing our skin?
I mean, no, we can survive without it. We can live without skincare. I mean, a whole lot of people across the world do, you know?
That's a good point.
But does your skin feel better and look better when you do support it from the outside? Yeah, probably so. So there is a small vanity piece, but there's also just, I mean, you know what it feels like when your legs are just like so dry that they're itchy or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't feel very good. So there's certainly a really luxurious effect of taking care of your skin from the outside. So I think like the piece that I always love to get people to think about is like we don't make a body lotion, we make a body oil. And the reason we do that is because lotion is just water and oil held together with an emulsifier, and it has to be preserved because there is water in the formula. So any formula that has water has to be preserved. A formula that's just oils is not going to grow anything. It can go rancid, but it's not going to grow mold or bacteria. So people are taking their showers and they're getting out and they're wiping all the water off their skin, and then they're applying a lotion that is like 70% water to their skin again. So I sort of sat down one day and went, well, that's just really silly. Why don't we just put the oil component on our skin when our skin is sopping wet? We can massage it in. So there's the emulsifier.
Kind of like a DIY lotion
I mean,
in a
it's
moment.
basically if you put a oil on wet skin, you'll see a little emulsion happening. It gets a little milky looking. And then you don't have to preserve the oil. So we just eliminated a bunch of ingredients that have no benefit to your skin by applying just a really high quality oil. And you can do it with something as simple as like safflower oil or sunflower oil.
And in terms of the high quality oil for the skin, what kind of oils does the skin prefer?
So for my favorite, if I were going to pick one oil to use, it would probably be sunflower or non-toasted sesame oil. Those two sink in really nicely and sort of leave a nice finish on the skin. People love coconut oil, but it is so drying to your skin over time because of the fatty acid profile.
Explain to me how oils, I've heard that before. Explain to me how oils, which to me are like lubricating, how can that be also drying?
It has to do with the fatty, like the lipid composition of the oil.
The saturated fat nature of coconut oil?
Yeah, and the length of the fatty acid change. So for coconut oil, the reason that it's solid at room temperature is because it has a lot of long chain fatty acids in it, and those long fatty acid chains get kind of tangled up and cause the solidity of the oil. So there's a totally different product called fractionated coconut oil, which is where they steam raw coconut oil and they separate the long chain fatty acids from the medium chain fatty acids. The medium chain fatty acids, they can move with the skin more successfully. They don't leave, like the long chains will kind of sit, like coconut oil will leave you really greasy for a while, and that's those.
And greasy and then dry.
Greasy and then dry, exactly, because it sort of doesn't really penetrate very well. So certain oils just sort of work better. Jojoba oil is the closest to the skin's sebum, like the natural sebum that we create. But for me, it's a little heavy for all over application. You wouldn't want to take sebum and apply it all over yourself as a layer. Like I'm going to leave my skin to do that piece. But the sunflower and sesame both have a really nice texture that sort of penetrate at the right layer.
And do we need to be mindful of the oxidation of oils when applied topically? Yeah,
and okay, so if you are you want to buy something with a longer shelf life. So sunflower usually has a pretty good shelf life. We use a rosemary antioxidant, a CO2 extract of organic rosemary in order to...
That's kind of the preservative.
It's an antioxidant.
Right, so preventing the oxidation.
It prevents oxidation, exactly. So it doesn't preserve, but it prevents the rancidity. So that gives our body oils a shelf life of like a year, which is nice.
Cool. That's a great use of an antioxidant to prevent oxidation of an oil.
Exactly.
Very cool. So we talked about kind of the outside in nourishment of the skin, which may or may not be necessary. I think in Colorado, it's like a little bit more necessary. I grew up in Arizona and it was necessary.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so what is your kind of approach philosophy to the inside out nourishment of skin?
So, I mean, I think, I'm not going to say anything that you haven't said a million zillion times. I mean, I've eaten a plant-based diet for the last, 20 years or so. More or less, I do eat some sort of consciously sourced dairy, occasionally, like free range eggs. But I think if you're aware of, sort of the fatty acids that you're putting in and the proteins, and that you're sort of bringing some attention to balance within it, I think the things that really get skin fired up in a terrible way are any kind of processed sugar, right? So sugar will start that inflammatory cascade.
It's so interesting, because I eat a carbohydrate based diet, like, 80% carbohydrates. And when processed sugar sneaks in, because, I'm not afraid of carbohydrates.
Right. Yeah.
But processed sugar is so interesting. It, like within an hour or two, it'll be like pimple on the face.
Yep. It's amazing.
In usually like the same spots,
Yeah. Even my 15-year-old, like, who will like go into the pantry and just mac out on some, organic version of Oreos or whatever that we have. Because I don't limit sugar for my kids. I'm just like, you deal with how it makes you feel, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be restrictive to the point where they're going to go overboard, like I'm going to give it to them and they can work through it. But she clearly sees it. She's like, okay, I ate a lot of sugar, like, a couple days ago, and now my skin is totally reacting to it.
Yeah, I think it's really great to develop that attunement and kind of that barometer of what's going on the inside, because skin is kind of the window to the inside.
It totally is.
Yeah,
and
it's the biggest organ.
People are always saying things like, my skin is freaking out. And I'm like, well, it's just telling you something. And it's not doing anything to you. It's actually doing something for you. So for me, like with my dermatitis, I mean, if you're looking at me right now and I have no makeup on, you can't really tell that I have it, right? But if I stop taking care of myself, so if I stop sleeping, or if I let my stress get really high, or if I drink coffee every single day, which is for some reason a trigger for some of us with dermatitis, then it starts to show up again. And so I'm sort of grateful to it at this point, because it's telling me something. It's saying things are like not balanced right now.
Yeah. No, I love that relationship with symptoms, because I think when people have any sort of symptom, whether it's on their skin or in their gastrointestinal tract or anywhere else, they're like, get this away, make this go away as soon as possible. But if we can learn from our symptoms, then we can stay on track.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the practice of meditation, right? If you can become a little bit more of an observer, where you're like,
what is this teaching me?
Look
What
at
is
that.
this for?
What's going on there? Yeah. But without taking it quite so personally.
Cool. So sounds like plant-based,
so
high
plant-based,
nutrient
and then,
density.
And then the other thing that I definitely see a big connection between is acne and dairy. So dairy definitely seems to fire up acne. And I know in like TCM, there's a whole, congestive component to dairy. I don't know if I were to look at it from a Western medicine perspective, how they would explain that.
I think it's the IGF-1 kind of, increased, messing with the hormones essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those are the two areas that I think really get acne fired up. But as far as dermatitis stuff goes, or eczema, I think there are a lot of people actually who have a corn allergy when it comes to eczema. So I always tell people to try cutting corn, which is almost as hard to do as cutting gluten, if not more.
Certainly when we're eating processed food, corn oil, corn syrup, corn flour. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's something that's worth experimenting with. I cut gluten out 4 or 5 years ago just because my stomach hurts when I eat it.
And do you think that it has anything to do with the GMO herbicide stuff?
It's sort of the only explanation I've heard that makes sense, to people going over Europe and having, loaf after loaf of bread with no symptoms.
Yeah. Have you had that experience yourself?
I haven't been to Europe since my kids came along, so I need to go back, and I'm going to eat a croissant and see what happens.
And you're not going to get any sort of stomach ache, I'm sure. Well, we've kind of talked around stress and how I know that's my other huge trigger for pretty much everything, and this connection with the body as, this kind of barometer and this messenger. And for me, when I'm stressed out, my body lets me know in so many cool ways. And one of which being the skin. And so we've got to deal with that, right? I mean, anyone struggling with, I guess, any symptom, but especially the skin, they need to focus on kind of what the relationship with stress is, right?
Yeah. I mean, it needs to be like an active stress management protocol.
Yeah. What does that look like for you, Sarah?
Let's see. So, just this year, I've sort of dabbled with meditation because mostly I'm like way too busy to meditate. And also it doesn't work for me. But I did like a little experiment back in June where I just committed to a daily practice and starting at 5 minutes a day and then increasing weekly until I was up to 20. And I decided I would just commit to 30 days of that to see what happened. And I wanted to just see if I noticed anything. And I went into it like, this is not going to work for me. Like I was this pissy little kid going into it. And I was really very surprised to find the effect that it's had. And I've continued it. And so I commit to 15 minutes a day. And, I miss an occasional day, but for the most part, it's a daily practice for me. That really has been impactful when it comes to my stress levels, because I call it the buffer zone. It's like it creates this little buffer between me, and all of the things that are my life and that happen in my life. And I'm able to observe things from a little bit of a remove that feels really healthy. It's not that I'm disconnected from my life in any way, but I'm triggered so much less easily now. And in my interpersonal relationships and even within myself, I use that email example because today it's been like that. It's like drinking from a fire hose in my inbox today. And when that happens, sometimes I find like I'm sitting there with my shoulders up around my ears and now I'm able to kind of be like, whoa, my inbox is on fire today. This is wild. And I'll get to it.
Yeah. So, meditation is kind of a central component of your, it sounds like a new thing.
That part's sort of new. Yeah. I mean, I'm an athlete, for my whole life. And so more or less daily exercise has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. And that's really a meditative thing for me in many ways too. So if I'm trail running, like especially trail running for me, because you can't really think about anything but where your feet are going.
Well, you can, or then you'll
and
fall
then you
down
fall.
like
and
what I've done a couple times this summer.
Me too. I have a scar on my head right here. So exercise is a pretty critical component of my mental health. I mean, it really is. The endorphin thing is very, very real, and it is so healing, and it is such an available tool for all of us that it's, I always tell, and people are like, how do you stay motivated to exercise? And my answer is like, because I want to feel good. Like, what?
It seems like Coloradans kind of get that maybe a little bit more so than other people. I don't know. I definitely think people joke about the Rocky Mountain High, but it seems like you experience it. I know I experience it. That being said, I also feel really good when I exercise anywhere. So, well, what do you think meditation is kind of the answer for everyone then? Or like if someone says, Sarah, I'm just like so stressed out. I know that stress is, affecting the health of my skin and the rest of my body and my relationships. Like,
I think that's part of it. I think that, I got to see in the ER like a pretty broad spectrum of human health and illness. And then losing my mom sooner than I wish I had, was another like little perspective check along the way. And I think, sometimes there are people in my life where I want to say, you should go to Africa and volunteer for a little while or something where there's a perspective shift that just, like you have access to water, like the internet and food. So everything's actually fine.
Yeah. First world problems.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. Like people just think that their lives and their issues are just a lot more important than they really are. And I don't mean to say that in a belittling way, but For me, I think like we moved from Georgetown to 27 acres right underneath Mount Sopris. So we have Sopris sitting above us, this 13,000 foot mountain sitting above us all the time. And it's this constant like perspective meter for me. It's like we are just teeny little nothings, right? And we're all going to be gone so soon. And so it's really just a question of how much, you know, we can love in the time we're here and what type of positive impact could we possibly make while we're here.
And we're always forgetting how little we are and thinking that, you know, the world does revolve around us, and then remembering again that, oh my gosh, nothing really does matter, and then forgetting. So yeah, kind of, you know, I hear you on essentially just cultivating an awareness and a remembering of our place in this crazy universe.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's not to, you know, say that having a parent who's sick or, you know, a difficult child or a stressful marriage, or those things are real, and those problems are real. But there's 7 billion of us or more.
Yeah, I
here.
think
We're like closer to 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just not that unique, like in your problems, you know?
Totally.
So just having that like collective awareness and taking a step back, and that's really, you know, so if the answer is meditation, part of the reason that it is meditation is because it allows you that perspective, you know, or at least certainly it's done that for me, where it just removes you a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's all about the perspective. Has there been anything else in your life that has given you such perspective, aside from meditation and living at the base of Sopris and nature and stuff?
That's a good question. I think just I'm a feeler. So I feel people's pain really like acutely. So when I was working in the ER, it was really hard to manage that in a way, because people would come in these really crushing situations, and the empathy that I felt for them was very real. And so I think that sort of like connected me to my fellow people in a way that I might not have gotten to see otherwise. Just this like, and I'm not like a practicing Buddhist or anything, but just this acknowledgement that we all have suffering and that we're all kind of in this together. And again, like, I'm not so special to think that my suffering matters more than anyone else's.
Yeah, I like that kind of the cliche, you know, we're all one sort of thing, which is cliche and true, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And so stress and your relationship with stress, how has that shifted or influenced your health, like physically? Have you had any experiences of like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed and I feel like crap and I've got all this health stuff going on, and then did that ever transform as your relationship with stress kind of shifted?
No, not really. I mean, I've definitely had skin stuff. I mean, I'm sort of grateful because it's led my product development. Like I had that.
I need this. I'm going to make this.
I was like, so I think skin is where my stress, when it does get out of control, that's where it wants to manifest. So maybe that's why I was drawn to skincare stuff, is because it felt really healing to me, because that's where my stress wants to show up. I don't know. But no, I haven't. I mean, knock on wood, and I'm incredibly grateful for this, but I haven't had, you know, any sort of chronic big health issues that have been plaguing me. I mean, I'm 46 now, so I have aches and pains that are coming up as a, you know, 46-year-old athlete. Those happen, and my body is definitely not the same as it was when I was 35, but it's all like within the normal scope, you know, and I'm totally grateful for the strong, able body I have.
And I don't foresee any sort of health conditions, considering your relationship with stress and life and other, you know, health well-being practices.
Who knows? I never take it for granted. And I have some bad DNA when it comes to pancreatic cancer, unfortunately. So I try to, but I can't like live my life in fear of it either. Right. I mean, that's just not going to help anything. So it's either going to happen or it's not. And I'm I'm just going to live my best life until I figure that out.
Yeah, totally. I just on the last episode was talking. My mother was the guest on my last podcast.
I
You're
have to go
following
back
up
and
my
listen.
mom. But we were talking about how people can stress about stress and like, oh, I learned that stress can cause cancer or feed pathogens.
Right.
What do I do? And
Totally.
yeah, just taking a step back. I like the idea of that buffer zone and just kind of looking at those thoughts, looking at that kind of reality, and okay, like what am I gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I see it all the time, especially like in Instagram and the wellness world, that people just stress about toxins and about whatever their thing is that they're avoiding, whether it's soy or gluten or or parabens, but like if you let it get out of control, it's its own, your avoidance of those unhealthy things is unhealthy in itself, because it's obsessive and it's like it's not allowing you to live your life. Yeah. It's a constant sort of refrigerator hum in your mind, and that's an unhealthy thing to have turned on.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about health in our world today, a lot of people are just looking at our, cholesterol and our biomarkers and our, what it looks like, but we can't forget about well-being, which is like what it feels like, and like health and well-being are hand in hand, and so I hear what you're saying for sure, and
there's a lot of people. I went to a conference one time, and the keynote speaker was a woman who had been in the professional realm and left that to become some sort of wellness person. I don't know if it was a yoga instructor or something. And her whole keynote performance was this, I'm calling it a performance for a reason, was about, her leaving the high stress world behind and embodying this wellness with her new thing. And then I was speaking later at the event, and I saw her backstage, and I've never seen such a basket of nerves before. I mean, she was maybe one of the most stressed out people I've ever been around. It was to the point where I wanted to leave the room, because it was like getting contagious. I was like, I feel really amped up. And so I thought that's really interesting too, in the wellness world, how many people there are out there who are not practicing what they preach. And it's not to say they're doing it intentionally, but just really more an acknowledgement of how hard it is to do that.
And I think we're living in a world today where our face and like how we're presenting ourselves on social media and the internet and all over the place, people are becoming more and more neurotic about it, maybe. And it is, backlashing, I think, for a lot of people. So thanks for speaking to that. And that's one thing that I've always appreciated about you and your accounts, and the authenticity that really comes through. I don't think I told you, before we moved to Carbondale just 6 or 7 months ago, I was kind of scrolling the Carbondale hashtag or something.
Gotcha.
And I saw a bunch of posts by you and like beautiful nature stuff, I think, and I was like, this person looks like they know how to live. And then so that's how I came to follow you, and then a couple months later we were neighbors.
Awesome.
Well, wrapping this conversation up and maybe focusing back on skin for a little bit, we talked about, I think we talked about a lot of, things to avoid and things to put on and put in the body, and less is more, and let the skin do what it does. And, but what else, is there anything else that we're missing in this conversation about how to optimally nourish the skin and support the skin and being healthy and vibrant? And also we didn't talk about aging, and so I don't know if, we can,
there's so much to talk about. There's like 10 podcasts. Let's see. So one question we get a lot is like, well, okay, I want to have a healthier skincare routine, and I want to avoid things like parabens and phthalates and synthetic fragrance and blah blah blah. What's the first thing I should change? And you're not as much in the like beauty world as I am, but people are always like, oh, make sure not to use toxic mascara and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, I get that, and I agree, but your eyelashes are a very small percentage of you. So I always tell people if they can get rid of their body wash, which comes in a plastic bottle and is full of all kinds of foaming agents and usually synthetic fragrance, and switch to an organic bar soap, and then follow that with a body oil used on wet skin, then your skin from your neck down is 91% of the surface area of your body. Your face is 4.5. So in terms of sheer math,
and your
eyelashes are like 0.2. I don't
Yeah.
even know. And so the math works out. If you switch to an organic bar soap and a really healthy, beautiful body oil, you've eliminated 91% of the things that your skin's coming in contact with. And then you also want to take a look at your laundry detergent, right? Because that is something you're also coming in contact with all the time. So you want to switch. I recommend a brand called Molly's Suds. I don't get a kickback from them, but it's just a really pure brand, the powder. But even some of the natural brands have that SLS in it. So it's worth just running back and double checking your labels.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a really great starting point. And then in terms of facial skincare / anti-aging stuff. I always say we're sort of an anti-aging brand simply because, one of the few things that we're all doing here in our time together is aging. Every single one of us is doing it right this minute. And to promote a culture of fear around that feels really terrible to me. It feels like if I told you right now that we just learned that oxygen is toxic. You have to keep breathing it, right? Exactly. And that's what we're all doing. We're all holding our breath around aging. And it's such a shame because, my mom was 64 when she died. She would have loved to get to 80 or 90. She didn't. So it's this ridiculous vanity cycle that we're caught in. Of course you want to age in a healthy way and feel as beautiful as you can in your own skin. That I totally understand. But the degree to which that whole thing has gotten just terribly out of control, I mean, to the point that women are shamed for having gray hair and men aren't. That's just so bizarre to me.
It is. I mean, I haven't really thought of it until this moment, but yeah, there are men who are putting gray streaks in their hair, and there are 90 whatever percent of women are taking them out.
Right. And it's this whole thing that's gotten so deep in the culture. I was doing the whole hair coloring thing for a couple of years where, I was at the stylist and she's like, do you want me to cover up these grays? Don't, before anyone sees. And instantly I felt yeah, I didn't even stop to think about it. And so that whole thing is happening with dermatologists. Do you want me to just a little Botox here? And I'm not sort of slamming hair color or Botox. I'm just saying, make your own decisions when it comes to that. How do I want to age? How do I want this to go? And, is letting my silver hair come in and my crow's feet blossom, is that okay with me? Because what are they going to remember when I'm gone? Right. I think about my daughters and they're just not going to remember those things about me. And if they do, it's going to be in a really beautiful way where they're like, man, when mom laughed until she cried, her eyes would crinkle up, So I think anyway, so all that said, it's sort of a risky position for me as a beauty brand owner to be promoting wrinkles and gray hair, but, but I do think that healthy skin is really important, and it really allows you to feel super confident in your skin, and that confidence really comes across as beauty.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that the anti-aging, what do we call it? The world of anti-aging and all the treatments and procedures and pills and potions and all that kind of stuff is very superficially focused and doesn't really promote health and well-being. So it's okay, you're going to look good when you're 70, but you're going to feel like crap and die when you're 75. How about we just feel good and then we'll probably look all right.
Yeah.
And because, most people who are healthy look and feel healthy on the outside and on the inside.
It's totally true. And I always tell people too, I can't give you any product to make you beautiful if you're not behaving beautifully. Right? I mean, if you're being not the best human being you can be, then no product's going to work for you. Oh
man. And I know a lot of people who on first glance, it's oh, woman is beautiful. And then after a conversation, it's like, actually,
yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is interesting how, I mean, and really like I feel like my eyes change. I feel like I see people differently. And obviously on the contrary, it's like, not that I try to judge people by their appearance, but I think it's kind of inevitable. And it's like, oh, that person, could use a little help physically. Maybe but then I have a conversation with them and all of a sudden they're beautiful. Like, like physically, literally they change.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of a good place to wrap things
Good
up.
takeaway message.
Yeah, for sure. Beauty on the inside out, and focusing on health and well-being, and not just like erasing wrinkles or whatever.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. So, Sarah and Miss Osmia, where can people find you online, and where can people find your soaps? And are they like available around the world or just in the country?
Yeah, they're U.S. and Canada, but we really sell a pretty limited selection because I am a doctor, not a businesswoman. So I didn't really, as I developed the line, I sort of didn't build in probably quite the right margins that I should have for a huge distribution of wholesale products. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is really that we want people to come to our website, which is osmiaorganics.com, because we have a huge wealth of information there about everything from, sort of wellness to skincare to yoga to playlists to my favorite vegetable soup recipe to whatever it is. So we really want that to be a source of information for people and more importantly, of inspiration for people. Great. And that's really where our Instagram feed is. That's my playground where I get to try to fire people up to take great care of themselves and to feel great joy in their days.
Yeah. Osmium Organics, right?
Yep.
On Instagram. Yeah, I remember I felt a little embarrassed. I had just read an article about Palo Santo, and I saw that you had just made a post about some Palo Santo product. I was like, oh, I just learned that it's like some endangered species, and I felt like, do you know this? And you send me over to this long, beautiful blog post on how you source your Palo Santo and how, so yeah, you're really connected. You're doing your homework, and thank you for that.
Yeah. And same to you. Thanks for doing what you do and helping people live their best lives.
We're doing our due diligence, doing our duties. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, nice connecting finally, more in more depth, Sarah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
All right. Peace and love. Until next time.